I think so. Oh, there we are. Bert, nobody can. Shabbat Shalom to everyone. We're going to get started here in about a minute. So everybody relax. Wherever you are, remember, wherever you are, there you are. Shabbat Shalom, Irene. Shabbat Shalom to Ellie, or Eli, depending on whether you're Hebrew or Americanized. And Shabbat Shalom to James Mathis from Mobile. From the Mathis Mishpocha, he says. And Irene says Shabbat Shalom to Rabbi Silverman and to Minette, who we'll see in a bit. And Shabbat Shalom to Max. Max, I know I owe you a call. Hopefully we'll have a chance to talk this week. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Agudath Israel Etz Ahayem Synagogue here in beautiful Montgomery, Alabama. It is a gorgeous morning. The temperature is perfect, and I have no I have no hope that it will stay this way. It'll get hot soon, but for now, I love the temperature. Welcome to our Shabbat service. I hope everyone has had a great Shabbat. Today is going to be a great Shabbat, as every Shabbat is, but primarily because I get to welcome a colleague on the Bima after the Torah service, Rabbi Steve Silberman of Avas Chesed in Mobile. And then keep in back your mind, next week we have an Ufra for Richard Leibovitz and the Leibovitz family. We are going to have a sanctuary full of people, and you are all welcome to come join us. For now, we are praying out of Sidor Lev Shalem, and we begin page 103 with the Birchot HaShachar, the blessings of the morning. Please rise if you are able. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lasech vivina levchin ben yom uvein laila. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesani betzomo. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesani ben charin. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesani Yisrael. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrahim. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Mabi Sharmim. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Matir Asirim. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Zokev Kefufim. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Rokal Haaretz al hamayim. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hamechin mitzarei gaver. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam She'asa likol tzarki. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Oz Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Ot Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hanotein layoev koach. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Utenenu hayom v'chol yom chen chesed rachmi b'necha v'nechoen v'tingmalenu chasedim tovim. Baruch Adonai gomer chasedim tovim li'amo Yisrael. You may be seated. We continue page 112 with Psalm 92. Hayom Yom Shabbat Kodesh Shebuch Hayom Vrim Bevek Hamikdash Mizmar Shir Le'Yom HaShabbat. Od Yenuvun Besevede Shenim Vranim Yulagid Kirshanat Surivaloav Latabo. Page 120, Psalm 30. Mizmar Shir Chanakat Baile David. הפכת מספרי למוחלי פיתקתי סחי ועצקני שמחה למען יזמך ולא ידום אדוני אלוהי לעולם עודך. We rise, page 122, for the beginning of Pesukei Zimra, and we join together in Baruch Shemar. Ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 Baruch she'amar v'haya olam Baruch hu Baruch oseh v'reshit Baruch Omer v'Yosef Baruch gozer kayem Baruch merachim al haaretz Baruch merachim al habriot Baruch mishalem sachar tov l'reyav Baruch chai la'ad v'kayam lanetzach Baruch podeh u'matzil Baruch shemo Ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 Ya la 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 Ya la 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 Ya la 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 Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Ho'el v'rachamim hamahula b'fi amo Mishabach umafal harabi shon chasidav Va'avadav shirei David avdecha Nehalelech Adonai Eloheinu Yahachid chayil mi melech mishabach v'deshma gado baruch et Adonai melech mehulal b'hatishpachot. You may be seated. We continue page 136. Ashrei yoshvei veitecha od yalalu chasela. Tehillat Adonai Dover Pivi V'Reiko B'Sar Shem Kadshel Elam V'Ad V'Nachnu Nevarechya Me'atav Yad Olam. Hallelujah. Page 141, Psalm 150. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, b'kadsho. Hallelujah, b'kiyauzo. Hallelujah, v'gvuotav. Hallelujah, karav gudlo. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, beteka shofar. Hallelujah, beneva vechinor. Hallelujah, betof macho. Hallelujah, beminim viugav. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, b'tzil tzlei Hallelujah, b'tzil trei trua. Kol anshama tehallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol anshama tehallelujah. Hallelujah. Kol anshama tehallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Baruch Adonai le'olam amen v'amen. Baruch b'tzion shchein Yerushalayim hallelujah. Baruch Adonai Elohim Elohei Yisrael nivle levado. Uvaruch Shem kvodo li'olam yimelech v'et koretz. Amen v'amen. Page 145. Nishmat kochai tivarech et shimecha hu Adonai Eloheinu. Page 146. Mid melach mishvelach mi'aharuch lach oel hagadol gibor v'hanora el elyon konei shamayim va'aretz nehel elchon shebechacha unferchon v'rechet shem kodeshecha kamor leDavid parchi nafshi et Adonai v'chol keravai et shem kodesho ha'el b'taz mozecha gadol b'chavod shemecha Hagibor lenetzach v'nomenorodtecha Hamelech hayoshev al kisei ram v'nisa shochen ad maharom v'kadosh shemo v'chatuv ranenu tzadikim b'Adonai l'shirim nava tehila b'fihi yesharim titalahu Uvdivrei tzadikim tiparach, uvilshon chasidim titromam, uvekerev kedoshim titkadash, umakalot revavot amachobet Yisrael. Lehodod lehaleh l'shabeach, Lefale remem la deliverek lalel kales al kol divrei shirot v'tishbachot David ben Yishai avdecha mishichecha page 148 Yishtabach shimecha la'ad malkeinu. Berachot vehodot mi'atav yad ulam baruch Adonai El melech gadol batishpachot, El odot adon haniflaot, Habocher b'shirei zimra melecheo, Chei ha'olamim. Good morning, Shabbat Shalom, Dr. Kupferberg and Ramona. How are you both? Nice to see you. We take a collective breath as we move from the preliminary part of our davening, as we move into Shacharit. Please turn to page 149. Rise if you are able and join me for the call to worship the Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, yotzer v'recho shecho se shalom v'reyat hakol. You may be seated. Page 150. Hakol yotuch v'yakol yishabechucha. Ein kirchach Adonai Eloheinu b'olam hazeh v'yeina z'lemachin l'chayei olam haba. Hefes b'tagolenu mot HaMashiach v'yein do melech HaMoshienu l'tchiyat hametim. El Adon al kol ha'masim baruch u'mvorach b'fi kol neshama gadlo v'tuvo Malei olam datu tvuna sovavi moto hamid goe al chayot hakodesh v'nedar bechavod ala merkava zechut umishor lifnei chiso chesed v'rachamim lifnei chevodo Tovim me'orod shebara Eloheinu yitzaram bedat bevina uvaskel koach ugvura natan bahem liod moshlim bekerev tevel meleim ziv umefikim noga Noezivam bechol ha'olam, Semechim b'tzetam, V'sasim bevoam, Osim b'yema, Ritzon konam, B'yer v'chavod, Notnim lishmo, Tzala v'rina lezecher malechuto, Kara l'shemesh v'yizrachor ravehit kinturat alevana shevach notnim lo kol tzeva maron tiferet ugedula zofim v'yofanim V'chayot HaKodesh, page 152. Lo ela sheshavat mikol ha'masim bayom, mashvit aleh v'shiv al kisei chavodo. Titbarach Moshiach shavach masiyadecha v'yamarei shasiti yafaruch hasila, page 153. Titbarach sureinu malkin v'golein b'rei kedoshim. וכולם פותחים את פיהם בקדושת טהרה, בשירה וזמרה, מברכים שבחים דברים מריצים ומקדישים וממליכים את שם מועל המלך הגדול הגיבור והנורא קדוש הוא, וכולם מקבלים עליהם מלכות שמיים זה מזה, ונודרים רשות זה לזה, להטיס לאותם בנחת רוח, בשפה ורבנים הקדושה, כולם כחרונים וימרים בהירה, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך על הארץ כבודו. באופנים וחיות הקודש ברש כדו מנצל מצרפים, לימתם משבחים וימרים, ברוך אדוני ממקומו, לאל ברוך נמות יתנו. אור חדש על ציון דהיר, ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו. אור חדש על ציון דהיר, ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו. ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאור. page 154. אהבה רבה אהבתנו, אדוני אלוהינו, חמלה גדולה ותך גמלת עלינו. אבינו מלכנו, בעבור אבותינו, שבטחו בך, אבינו מלכנו. ותלמדנו חוקי חיים, כן תחננו למדנו, אבינו ורחמן, המרחם רחם עלינו, ותן בליבנו להבין ולהשכיל לשמוע, ללמוד וללמד, לשמור ולעשות. וקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה. והננו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחד לבבינו לאהבה ויראה את שמך, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, כי בשם קדשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו, נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך, והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותוליכנו קוממיות לארצנו, כי אל פה ישועתך, ובנו בחרת מכוח ולשון, וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול, סלע באמת, להודות לך וליחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. והיה אם שמעו תשמעו מצוות אשר אנוכי מצוותכם היום לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיך ומלכותו בכל לבבכם ובכל נפשכם. Vayomer Adonai Moshe lemor daber el bnei Yisrael v'amarta lehem v'yasu lahem tzitzit al kanfev gehem ladoratam v'natnu al tzitzit hakana patil techelet v'haya lachem letzitzit oritem oto uskartem net kol mitzvot Adonai v'asitem otam ולא תטו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם למען תסגרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם Adonai Elohechem Emet. Lidorvado Kayam Ushmo Kayam V'chisonocha on Malchuto V'imanato Le'ad Kayamet. We are on page 157, fourth line from the top of the page. Udvar V'chayim Mikayim Nemonim. Hemet shatahu Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohotenu malkeinu melech avotenu goelenu goel avotenu yotrenetzu yeshatenu podenu matzilenu me'elam shemecha ein Elohim zulatecha ezrat avotenu atahu me'olam. Page 158. Mimitzrayim giyaltanu Adonai Eloheinu mi beit avadim peritanu kol bechorehem haragata o bechorecha gahalta V'yamsu v'bakata v'zedim tibata v'didim me'varta hevarta v'yichasu mayim tzarehem echad mehem lo notar azot shibechu ahuvim Veromemu, 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 venatnu yedidim, zmirot shirot v'tishpachot, berachot v'hodot, למלך חי וקיים רם ונישא גדול ונורא משפיל גאים ומגביה השפלים מוציא אסירים פון נבים ויוזד עלים ויון אליעמו בית שvam אליו תהילות לאל עליון ברוך ומברך Moshe v'neschalach nishira b'simcha rabba v'yameru chulam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi kamocha nedor b'kodesh nora tehilot o seifele שירה חדשה, שיבחו גאולים, שמחה על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו. והמליכו ויאמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ופתחנו מך, Yehuda v'Yisrael, go aleinu Adonai tzavot shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai Ka'od Yisrael. We rise for the Shabbat morning Amidah, pages 159 through 166. We will chant the first three brachot out loud through the end of the Kedusha, and then you may continue silently with the final four brachot through page 166. Again, we begin together, page 159. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avuteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Dovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chastei Avot Umevi Goel Lefnei V'neihem L'man Shemo B'Yahava Melech Ozer Fakir Mashiach Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Mufaked Sarah Atah Gibor Le'lam Adonai Mechaye Metim Rav L'Hoshia Mashiv HaRuach Marid Agashem Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed Mechaye Metim Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim V'Chofei Cholim Umatir Aserim Umekayim Emunato Lishenei Afar Micham Mocham Bal Givurot Umido Melach Melech Memit Umechayeh Umatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman atah l'chayot metim Baruch atah Adonai Mechayeh hametim. Nikadesh et shimcha ba'olam Kishem shema kadishim Oto bishmei ma'om kakatuv ayad neviecha v'kara ze el ze v'yamar kadosh 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 Adonai tzavot Malach ha'aretz kevodo. Az beko hashkado adir vechazak mashmim go nitna seim Leumat Serafim, Leumatam, Baruch Yomeru, Baruch V'Adonai Mimkomo. Mimkom Chamalkeinu Tofia V'Timloch Aleinu Ki Mechakim Anachnu Lach Matai Timloch Betzion Bekarov B'Yameinu Leolam Vo'et Ishkon Tit gadal v'tit gadash betoch Yerushalayim mirecha ledor vador lenetzach netzachim ve'einenu tirena malechutecha kadavar hamur b'shirei yuzecha al yedei David Mashiach Tzidkecha, Ya la 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 la, Ya la 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 la, Ya la 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 la, Ya la 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 la, Ya la 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 la, Ya la 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 la. Yimloch Adonai lelam Elohai Zion ledor vador. Hallelujah. Ledor vador, ledor vador, ledor vador nagid God lecha. Ledor vador, ledor vador, ledor vador nagid God lecha. Ulenetzach netzachim kedushak tanakdish, kedushak tanakdish. V'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu layamush leolam leolam voed. Ledor vador, ledor vador, ledor vador nagid God lecha. Ledor vador, ledor vador, ledor vador nagid God lecha. Ki amelech gado gado v'kadosh 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 ata. Ki amelech gado gado v'kadosh 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 ata. Ledor vador, ledor vador, ledor vador nagid God lecha. Ledor vador, ledor vador, ledor vador nagid God lecha. Baruch atah Adonai Ho'el HaKadosh. Modim anachnu lach. Ose shalom bimrama, uyase shalom aleinu, v'yoko Yisrael, v'imau, amen. Yase shalom, shalom aleinu, v'yoko Yisrael, yase shalom, Shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael. You may all be seated for a brief second. Make sure you stay hydrated with water. The other stuff comes later. We will now transition to our virtual Torah service. In a moment, we will open the Ark on page 168. For now, just take a deep breath, bask in the serenity, the solitude of the community of Shabbat together. There are several times in the service where I have to take a breath because I feel like I'm so tight from the pressures of the week. When I turn around and I do the Amidah, when I say the Amidah to myself, I can feel myself breathe out, and I can feel the tightness just leave my body. It is so cathartic. It's a great feeling that I only get on Shabbat morning. Actually, Friday night too. All of Shabbat services, whenever I do the Amidah, it's that which I every time I breathe out that stress that has just been building the entire week. So with that, we will go ahead and we will begin the Torah service, page 168. Please rise when the ark is opened. When the ark is open. Ein kamocha va'Elohim Adonai v'ein kemaasecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim umemshaltecha bechol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch le'olam v'oed Adonai oz li'amo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom, av harachamim heitiv avirtzoncha et Sion, tivnech omot Yerushalayim, Tivnech omot Yerushalayim Ki v'chalvad batochnu Melech Eram v'nisa Adon olamim. Now we rise as the ark is open. Vayehi ben so Aharon Vayehi Adonai v'yafutzu oyevecha v'yanusu misanecha mipanecha ki mitzion teitzei Torah ki mitzion teitzei Torah udavar Adonai mi'Yerushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Li'amo Yisrael B'kedushato. Ruler of the universe, praised be your name and your sovereignty. May you desire your people Israel forever, and may your liberating power be revealed to them in your sanctuary. Extend to us the goodness of your light, and with compassion accept our prayers. May it be your will to grant us long life and well-being. May we be counted among the righteous, and in your compassion protect us, our families, and all the people Israel. You are the one who nourishes and sustains all life. You rule over all, you have dominion over rulers, for true sovereignty is yours. I am a servant of the Holy One, whom I revere, and whose precious Torah I revere in every time and place. Not on mortals nor on angels do I rely, but rather on the God of heaven, the God of truth, whose Torah is truth, and whose prophets are true, and who abounds in deeds of goodness and truth. It is in God that I put my trust, and it is to your holy and precious name that I utter praise. May it be your will that you open our hearts to your Torah, and that you fulfill the desires of our hearts and the hearts of all your people Israel, for goodness, for life, and for peace. Amen. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Gadlu Ladonai iti, Unaramima Shemo Yachtav, Lecha Adonai Agedula, V'hagevura, V'hatiferet, V'hanetzach, V'hahod, Kicho Bashamayim Uvaretz, Kicho Bashamayim Uvaretz, Lecho Adonai Hamamlacha, Diamid Nase Lecho Lerosh Romemu, Romemu. Adonai Eloheinu, V'hishtachavu, V'hishtachavu, Lahadam Raglav Kadoshu, Romemu, Romemu. Adonai Eloheinu, V'hishtachavu, V'hishtachavu, Lahar Kadsho, Lahar Kadsho, Ki Kadosh, Adonai Eloheinu. Please be seated. Again, welcome, Shabbat Shalom. We are, the Torah portion this week is Shmini, and takes some interestingly wild swings in the text. We are in the third triennial, which means that each Torah portion is split into thirds. This is the old Israeli custom to divide the Torah into thirds. And this year we are reading the back end. Beginning after Simchat Torah, we will start reading the first part of the triennial. So today also happens to be a special Shabbat, the third of four special Shabbatot. I probably need to say this in an undertone, before Pesach. It's called Shabbat Parah. And like the laws of kashrut, which Rabbi Steve will talk about in a bit, between kashrut and the laws around the para adama are called a chok, a law or mitzvah of which there does not seem to be any rational explanation for why we have to do these, other than the Torah says we have to do them. But particularly are you going to talk about the para adama as well? No. So the para adama has to do with I'll read it in the Maft here, so I'll talk about it then. So I'm going to chant three aliyot. The first two will come from the triennial, and the third will come from Numbers, where we read about this special red cow. We start on Leviticus chapter 11, verse 1. And again, I'll chant these three aliyot and translate. Leviticus 11, 1, and your Etz Ahayem Chumash is on page 636. Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe v'el Aaron lemor alehem dabru el bnei Yisrael lemor zahot hachaya asher tochelu mikol habehema asher al haaretz kol mafreset parsa v'shosat shesa prasot Malat gera babehema ota tochelu ach et ze lo tochelu mimale hagera umimafarise haparsa et hagama mi male gera ufarsa enenu mafris Tamehu lachem ואת השפן ממלא גרעו ופרסה לא יפריסה טמאו לכם ואת הארנבת ממעלת הגרה היא ופרסה לא הפריסה טמאה היא לכם ואת החזיר כי מפריסה פרסה הוא ושוסף שסה פרסה והוא גרה לא יגר טמאו לכם מבשרם לא תאכלו ובנבלתם לא תיגעו טמאים הם לכם. Which means, the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying to them, "Speak to the Israelite people thus. These are the creatures that you may eat from among the land animals. Any animal that has true hooves, with clefts through the hoofs, and that chews the cud, such you may eat. The following, however, are those that either chew the cud or have true hooves, you shall not eat. The camel, although that it chews the cud, it has no true hoof. It is impure for you. The daemon, although it chews the cud, it has no true hooves. It is impure for you. The hare, although that it chews the cud, it has no true hooves. It is impure for you. And the swine, although it has true hooves, with the hoofs cleft through, it does not chew the cud. It is impure for you. You shall not eat of their flesh or touch their carcass. They are impure for you." Not one mention of health. Simply two facts of each animal. They chew the cud and they have a cloven hoof. Aliyah number 2, Leviticus 11, verse 9. Page 638. ואת זה תאכלו מכל אשר במים, כל אשר לא סנפיר וקשקשת במים בימים ובנחלים אותם תאכלו וכל אשר אין לו סנפיר וקשקשת בימים ובנחלים מכל שרץ המים ומכל נפש החיה אשר במים השקט הם לכם ושקט יהיו לכם מבשרם לא תאכלו ואת נבלתם תשקצו כל אשר אין לו סנפיר וקשקשת במים שקט הוא לכם. These you may eat of all that live in water. Anything in water, whether in the sea, in the seas or in the streams that has fins and scales. These you may eat, but anything in the seas or in the streams that has no fins and scales, among all the swarming things in the water, among all other living creatures that are in the water, they are an abomination for you, and an abomination for you they shall remain, and you shall not eat of their flesh. You shall not abominate their carcass. Everything in water that has no fins and scales shall be an abomination for you. Okay, I'm going to leave that without comment right now, because I don't want to say anything that Rabbi Steve might talk about later. And now we're going to jump to the Mafia Reading, which is in a different part of our Torah. This comes from Numbers chapter 19, verse 1, which again talks about why this Shabbat is called Shabbat Parah, and it's in your Etz Ahayem Chumash on page 880. Okay. וידבר אדוני משה ואל אהרון לאמור, זאת חוקת התורה שציווה אדוני לאמור, דבר בני ישראל ויקחו אליך פרה אדומה תמימה, אשר אין בה מום, אשר לא עלה לה עול, ונתתם אותה אל אלעזר הכהן, והוציא אותה אל מחוץ למחנה, ושחט אותה לפניו. ולקח אלעזר הכהן מדמה באצבעו ויזע את נוכח פני אוהל מועד מדמה 7 פעמים, ושרף את הפרה לעיניו, את אוריו ואת בשרה ואת דמה על פרשה ישרוף. ולקח הכהן עץ ארז וזוב ושני תולעת, והשליך אל תוך שריפת הפרה, וכיבס בגדיו הכהן, ורחץ בשרו במים, ואחר יבוא אל המחנה, וטמא הכהן עד הערב, והשורף אותה יכבס בגדיו במים, ורחץ בשרו במים, וטמא עד הערב. ויאסף איש טהור את אפר הפרה והניח מחוץ למחנה במקום טהור, ויטל לעדת בני ישראל למשמרת למי נידה חטאת היא, וכיבס האוסף את אפר הפרה את בגדיו וטמא עד הערב, ויטל לבני ישראל ולגר גר בתוכם לחוקת עולם, הנוגע במי לכל נפש אדם, וטמא 7 ימים. הוא יתחטא בו ביום השלישי, וביום השביעי יטהר, ואם לא יתחטא ביום השלישי וביום השביעי לא יטהר. כל הנוגע במי בנפש אדם אשר ימות ולא יתחטא, את משכן אדוני טימא, ונכרתה נפש ההיא מישראל, כי מי נידה לא זורק עליו טמא, או טומאתו בו. זאת התורה, אדם כל ימות באוהל, כה הבא אל האוהל וכה אשר באוהל יטמא 7 ימים, וכל כלי פתוח אשר אין צמיד פתיל עליו טמא הוא, וכה אשר ייגע על פני השדה בחלל חרב או ומת, או בעצם אדם או וקבר, יטמא 7 ימים. ולקחו לטמא מאפר שריפת החטאת, ונתן עליו מים חיים אל כלי, ולקח אזוב וטבל במים, איש טהור, ויזלו אל כל הכלים ועל הנפשות אשר היו שם, והנוגע בעצם או וחלל או ומת או וקבר. והזעת האוהל טמא ביום השלישי וביום השביעי, וחיטאו ביום השביעי, וכיבס בגדיו, ורחץ במים, וטהר בערב. ואיש אשר יטמא ולא יתחטא, ונכרתה הנפש ההיא מתוך הקהל, כי את מקדש אדוני טימא, מי נידה לא זרק עליו טמא הוא. ויטל להם לחוקת עולם, ומה זה מן מי הנידה יכבס בגדיו, והנוגע במי נידה יטמע עד הערב, וכל אשר יגבו הטמא יטמע, והנפש הנוגעת תטמע עד הערב. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, saying, This is the ritual law that the Lord has commanded. Instruct the Israelite people to bring you a red cow without blemish, in which there is no defect, and on which no yoke has been laid. You shall give it to Eleazar the priest. It shall be taken outside the camp and slaughtered in his presence. Eleazar the priest shall take some of the blood with his finger and sprinkle it 7 times toward the front of the tent of meeting. The cow shall be burned in its sight. Its hide, flesh, and blood shall be burned, its dung included. And the priest shall take its cedar wood, hyssop, and crimson stuff and throw them into the fire, consuming the cow. The priest shall wash their garments and bathe his body in water. After that, the priest shall re-enter the camp, but he shall be impure until evening. He who performed the burning shall also wash his garments in water, bathe his body in water, and be impure until the evening. A man who is pure shall gather up the ashes of the cow and deposit it outside the camp in a pure place, to be kept for water of lustration for the Israelite community. It is for purification. He who gathers up the ashes of the cow shall also wash his clothes and be impure until evening. This shall be a permanent law for the Israelites and for the strangers who reside among you. He who touches the corpse of any human being shall be impure for 7 days. He shall purify himself with it on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day he shall be pure. If he fails to purify himself on the 3rd and 7 days, he shall not be pure. Whoever touches a corpse, the body of a person who has died, and does not purify himself, defiles the Lord's tabernacle. That person shall be cut off from Israel. Since the waters of lustration are not dashed on him, he remains impure. His impurity is still upon him. This is the ritual. When a person dies in the tent, whoever enters the tent and whoever is in the tent shall be impure 7 days. And every open vessel and no lid, there's going to be a test after this, by the way, fastened down shall be impure. And in the open, anyone who touches a person who has killed, who died naturally on human bone or grave, shall be impure 7 days. Some of the ashes from the fire of purification shall be taken for the impure person, and fresh water shall be added to them in the vessel. A person who is pure shall take hyssop, dip it in the water, and sprinkle on the tent, on all the vessels and the people who were there, or on him who touched the bones of the person who was killed or died naturally, or the grave. The pure person shall sprinkle it upon the impure person on the 3rd day and on the 7th day, thus purifying him by the 7th day. He shall then wash his clothes and bathe in water, and at nightfall he shall be pure. If anyone who has become impure fails to purify himself, that person shall be cut off from the congregation, for he has defiled the Lord's sanctuary. The water of lustration was not dashed on him; he is impure. This shall be the law, then a law for all time. Further, he shall sprinkle the water of lustration, shall wash his clothes, and whoever touches the water of lustration shall be impure until the evening. Whatever that impure person touches shall be impure, and the person who touches him shall be impure until evening. Was that clear? Not totally. There's some inherent contradictions in all of that. Okay? So I'll get to that in a minute. So this is the law of the Parah Adamah. Basically, we take a red cow, we sacrifice it. The ashes are mixed with living water, mei nidah, and that collection of the ashes and the water are then sprinkled onto somebody who has come in contact with the dead twice in 1 week and therefore become pure. Why would we need to become pure? Isn't this just about the priests? Aren't the priests have to be pure to offer sacrifices? What do we need to be pure for? What is the deal? Who cares if we're pure or not? Okay? Well, it matters because of what today is. Shabbat Parah. This is the Shabbat that the third of 3 special Shabbatot before Pesach. And what do we need to be on Pesach? Is pure. In order to eat of the Paschal offering within the precincts of Jerusalem, the Israelites themselves had to be pure. And the only way to be pure is to have the water of the ashes of the praduma sprinkled in you. Then you may participate in the Passover ritual. Okay? Now, how many here have had the ashes of the praduma sprinkled on them? Nope, didn't think so. None of us. We are all impure with regards to contact with the dead. None of us are pure. Therefore, none of us can actually sacrifice the Paschal offering for Pesach. And by the way, we don't, right? We have a representation of the Paschal offering on the Seder plate, right? That's the shank bone. That's a representation. That's not the actual sacrifice. And by the way, you can't eat it. We can't eat it because we are impure. What a strange custom to do. And to have to read this in a day when it's not even applicable to any of us. Why do we read this? Because we all have to prepare ourselves for Passover in some way. What do we do for Passover? Well, some of us, to our chagrin, have to empty out our homes, turn it upside down, look for every piece of chametz, okay? And we have to toss it out. We have to sell it to a non-Jew if we can't find all of it. And we have to we have to change our dishes over. We have to clean our kitchens as if they've never been koshered. We have to kosher our entire kitchen. Okay? It's Irene's favorite holiday. Not. But the time you sit down at the Seder, I look at Irene and both of us go, it's done. For whatever we've done, whether it's been totally successful or not, we did our best to purify our homes for Pesach. Just like the ashes of the praduma were required for everybody to have sprinkled in them before Pesach, in order to get ready for Pesach. Yes, we don't have the Mei Nidah, we don't have the ashes of the red heifer anymore, but we still have to prepare ourselves, not just physically, but spiritually. Okay? What is this impurity? If I touch someone who's dead, what is it? Maybe a doctor would say, maybe there's some germs that attach to us, and we have to, I don't know, kosher ourselves. Maybe we have to boil ourselves to get rid of that. No. But what is it? It's something not physical. It's a spiritual impurity that we have to somehow get rid of. Okay? So we don't have the ashes of the praduma. So what do? We represent this by removing chametz from our houses. What does the chametz represent? The chametz represents the impurity in each and every one of our souls. Okay? What is that impurity? It's our bad character traits. It's those addictions that are so hard to get rid of. And everybody has an addiction. You don't have to be an alcoholic. Only alcoholics don't have the only addictions. There's many addictions. We are addicted to work, to sex, to food, to money, to everything. And on Pesach, to get ready for Pesach, we have to look within, and we have to remove the chumetz from within. Not everything, but just a little bit. It's like on Rosh Hashanah, those 3 books are open, right? And we have to convince God to move us into the book of life. Okay? Do we have to do every teshuvah we can think of? Well, we can try, but really, if all we have to do is tip the scales 1% in our favor. You don't have to be 100% good. You just have to be 51% good. Okay? So if you're only 49%, you just have to move it 2%, a minuscule amount. On Pesach, we try to move those scales just like on high holidays. By the way, Pesach is 6 months from the high holidays. It is a 6-month checkup from what we've done preparing for the high holidays, for our tshuva. We say on Pesach, and all those things that I promised myself I was going to do on Rosh Hashanah, how am I doing? Not well. Okay? So we get another chance. We get the chance to re-energize ourselves. This is what the Para Adama, this is why we read it. Not because we're looking for that red cow, which may never have existed, okay? But it doesn't matter. It's the idea of removing those parts of our personalities, of our character, that prevent us from what? From coming in, from being with community, from being with each other. All those, when we come into contact with the dead, what are we supposed to do? Separate ourselves from the community. Okay? Once we've been purified, we can come back together. Okay? So on Pesach, we do what we can to come back to community. So, all right, I'm going to leave that for a while. Probably talk too much. Yes, I usually do. Let me go ahead and I'll offer a mishberach at this point for those in and out of our community in need of a blessing for physical, spiritual, emotional healing. I will add the names on our list. I'll ask everyone here to go ahead and say your names that you would like to add, and those that are online, please go ahead and type in the names of those you would like to add that are not on this list. Mishaberach Avotenu Avram Yitzchak Yaakov Sarich Rachav Aleh Hu Yivarech V'Yarapeh Et Helen Byrne, Rhonda Blitz, Baruch Ben Elisheva, Arnold Fash, Sheila Gidry, Chana Batzara, Linda Smith, Marjorie Allen, Charles Miller, Sherry Ross, Iris Bat Rivka, Becca Martinez, Isaac Ben Joseph, Marsha Orange, Harab Malki Tzedek Ben Brucha, David Kelman, Yael Bat Nami Rivka, Natan Yaakov Ben Nami Rivka, Stephen Schaefer, Brian Berkowitz, Mike Watts, Kelly Mossberg, Jerry Weisenfeld, Kibuli, Jeannie Meisler, Miriam Patina, Tara Martinez Fernandez, Liz Wolko, Deanna Barber, Miriam Bat Rivka, Taraz Bat Ruth, Mark Platnick, Merlone Jermaine Barnes, Virginia Madden, Raymond Lobato Jr., Natalie Copeland, Christopher Hill, Lorenzo Rivera, Tana Boulard Rivera, Gittel Tamar Bat Miriam, Sarah Shoshana Bat Nami Rivka, Joseph Dumas, Marsha Hudson, Ed Jackman, Scott Decker, Bela Bus Rivka, William Williams, Marilyn Fadomsky, Jim Mittenswide, Lucy and Tilly Caldwell, Denny Bierman, Sheila Decker, Todd Bapp, Eugene Lobato, Rezo Bat Taraz, Roland Young, Marilyn Owens, Matt Zobel, Shannon Howard, Tim Whitmer, Nami Rivka Bat Miriam, Benio Neil Zaz, Jeff Caldwell, Margaret Caldwell, Ree Smith, and Roberta Rivera. Rabbi Silverman. Bert. Yvette. And we add to that list all of those, and it's a whole country of people that are suffering in Ukraine. V'et kolchim b'kila kedusha Agudath v'kilet tabobetho HaKadosh Baruch Hu malei rachamim aleihem lachas yicham chapatam v'shlach leim erfuah shlim menashmat nefesh v'ud haguf betoch shachol Yisrael shabbati lemizok u'refuah karov alavash bagalav zman kariv v'nomar Amen. I wish everyone suffering a refuah shlema, a quick and complete healing. Okay, now we will go ahead and return our virtual Sefer Torah. Ask everyone to please rise as the ark is open, page 183. Yahalelu et Shem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado, hodo al eretz, v'shamayim vayaren keren le'amo, tila lecho chasidav, lifnei Yisrael hamkarovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah, mihizmor leDavid, havu l'Adonai b'nei Elim, havu l'Adonai kavod va'oz, havu l'Adonai kavod shemo, ishtachavu l'Adonai behadrat kodesh, kol Adonai alamayim, ela kavod hirib Adonai amayim, amayim rabim, kol Adonai ba'koach, kol Adonai behadar, kol Adonai shover arazim, v'shaber Adonai et alzei halvanon, v'yarkidem kemo egel, Levanon v'Sirion kemo, kemo, v'nreimim, kol Adonai chotzev lavotesh, kol Adonai yachil midbar, yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, kol Adonai yecholeu ayalav, vayechasam yarod, uvehechalo kulo amer kavod, kulo omer kavod. Adonai lamabul yashav, vayeshev Adonai melech leolam, Adonai oz le'amo yitein, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Et amo v'shalom. Page 184. Uvnucho yomah. Ki lekach tov natati lachem, Torati al tazovu, Etz Ahayem lamachazikim ba, v'tomcheha meyushar deracheha darchei noam, v'chol netivoteha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva, Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. You may be seated. All right. Let me do this before I get yelled at that I didn't move the cam. This is a great Shabbat because it is a Shabbat of at least one first. And I am always delighted to welcome colleagues into our shul. But today is a really, really special invitation. I've been a rabbi here since 2007. Rabbi Steve Silberman has been rabbi at Avas Chesed in Mobile since the Stone Age. Don't know what year did you start there? 1990. Most of us weren't born then. And Rabbi Steve and I knew each other. We worked with each other. But for some reason that still just defies logic, kind of like the Para Aduma, we have developed a close, personal relationship right at the beginning of the pandemic, interestingly enough. Like I said, we knew each other, we were friends, but at the beginning of the pandemic, when our reach went beyond our physical doors to our sanctuaries, and we started reaching out virtually to everyone outside, we somehow found each other. And both of us went, why the heck did it take so long for that to happen? We have no idea. But I do know that has been one of the pleasures, meeting Irene, meeting everyone in my congregation has been a distinct pleasure. This is unique. It has been, I think it has, I'm not going to speak for Rabbi Steve, but I think for me, it has saved me during this time of isolation. And ever since the pandemic has started, believe it or not, I don't feel as isolated. We speak probably 2 or 3 times a week. We talk and we laugh, mostly laugh. We began the Alabama Community Virtual Havdalah together, which we do every week. We have been doing every week since May of 2020. We are, in a couple months, coming up to our 2nd anniversary of starting this incredible service that Rabbi Steve and I, we love it more than the people that come, you know. And we only had, we had a couple goals when we started. But the most important one is none of us that put on the Havdalah came in with egos. Now, think about that. How the heck do you suppress ego? Sometimes it's what keeps us going. It motivates us sometimes. But in order for us to produce this service that we do every week, we all come in as individuals. We all come in as one. Nobody feels like they have to do this or do that. And because of that, I believe we've been successful. We have at least 30 to 40 connections every week. Now think about that. Going on 2 years. How many things in your life do you get involved in that you still have 40 and 50 people attending on a regular basis? And we're talking on a weekly basis. So, but I am so appreciative of our friendship. I can't really, I probably already said enough, but I can't say enough. I could probably go on like this for a while, but I'm not. But I did want to invite Rabbi Steve to come up and address our congregation and his congregation, whoever's online. We have, we have about 20 or 30 people online. We have 6 people in our sanctuary, and it's my distinct pleasure to have Rabbi Steve Silberman of Avos Chesed to come up and address you. I'm going to have you stand here because it's a better, anyway. My friend.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Oh, wait a minute. No.
We're all set? We're all set. It is an enormous pleasure to be here. And I'm going to reiterate just a little bit of Rabbi Scott Kramer mentioned. We've known each other for quite a number of years, but for some reason, I did not turn my head on. I didn't wake up enough to really take advantage of having a friend and a colleague like Rabbi Kramer during these early years, some 9.5-ish years ago. And one of the few very good things that came forth out of this COVID pandemic experience is that Rabbi Kramer and I are now much closer. To see a benefit out of an epidemic indicates a hope for optimism. And when it came up that there was a possibility I could come up for a Shabbat to be with Rabbi Kramer, I said, I'm doing this. And I reiterate, it's just an absolute pleasure to get closer to you and Irene, and my wife, Minette, feels the same way. We're in the Parsha of Shmini, and I want to talk a little bit about kashrut. And perhaps you have a chumash at home, and we'll be touching on just a couple of phrases. If you have the chumash, it's going to be on page 636 and following. If you have a Tanakh, we're at Leviticus chapter 11. We're going to jump around a little bit. But first, I want to draw our attention to the name of the Torah reading. When you hear the number 8, what comes to mind? Anyone at all? Louder?
Yogi Berra.
Besides Yogi Berra, of course. Exactly right. Brit Mila. Okay, obviously I think about circumcision. And without going back to the book of Genesis, the book of Bereshit, when you think about the number 8, and obviously it's circumcision, ask yourself, without going back to the early part of Genesis, why do you think circumcision was defined as being on the 8th day? What else comes to mind when you think of the number 8? I'm searching for something, and in my mind, I turn to 8 is 1 more than 7. And so now that takes my mind back to the idea of creation. And 8, which is 1 more than 7, means that a unit of creation is complete. A unit of creation is complete. And so I would say, symbolic, at least for me, in my own little interpretation of my head, and my wife and I are privileged to have 3 sons come to the world and a daughter. And of course, we had a Brit Milah for all 3 of our boys. And standing next to a child of your own, along with children of your family members and friends, on the occasion of Brit Milah, is truly an exceptional experience. It grabs you on the inside, and you feel as if you're standing within the origins of our nation, our community. You're standing this close to God. And I see the number 8 as being a step beyond the perfection of completion. A step beyond the perfection of completion. And I want that floating around in our heads as we now turn to the Torah reading, which talks about keeping kosher, and the Torah reading is named Shemini, number 8. One sentence background is that last week we learned of the dedication, or the beginning of the dedication of the tabernacle. It took a year to build, and there was going to be a week-long dedication ceremony of the first ever Jewish place of worship. That begins in the end of last week's Torah reading and continues on to the early part of this week's Torah reading. It took a year to build. First ever pledge drive completed successfully, and a week-long dedication ceremony which is going to bring into play a brand new experience, community worship led by volunteers who've been dedicated to that sacred task. There's a lot wrapped up in that 7-day dedicatory experience which begins last week and ends here, you might say. And now we're on the 8th day, which is 1 day past the dedication ceremony of the first ever Israelite worship space. And what do we learn about? The 1 day beyond creation, you might say. Certain animals which you and I nickname kosher and non-kosher, or kosher and treif. Now jumping quickly. Chapter 11, verse number 2, page 637. Land animals. Fine. And we know that land animals are considered kosher if they have 2 criteria, having cloven hoof and chewing their cud. And now we jump to verse number 9 on page 638. Aquatic animals. And there are 2 criteria for aquatic animals, having fins and scales. And now we jump to 639, verse number 13, and we learn of animals that are flying in the air, birds, you might say, and no criteria are spelled out. And I want to stop for a minute. And as Rabbi Kramer mentioned earlier, there's no element whatsoever in this depiction that health is an issue, but instead purity is an issue. Yes, sir?
Predators, they eat other meat.
Exactly right. And it's been well presented in many commentaries that the birds that are listed here are predatory birds, and we refrain from eating predatory birds. And an ancient commentary from the Talmud puts forth the message that since they are predatory, we don't want to emulate those characteristics of being predators, and so we refrain from consumption of predatory fowl. Point taken. But I want to back up a little bit. What do we have? I see 3 habitats: land, water, air. And now I'm going to ask you to turn your brains on, and as Jews, and we've studied Torah and we keep Torah, all 5 books in our heads at all times, what comes to mind when you think of 3 different habitats: land, water, air? Does that bring to mind anything else? Creation. To my mind, it brings creation. And go back to, again, Genesis. And the opening of Genesis, God creates the universe, and we have chaos. And then we have the separation of chaos into beauty and into order, and it's almost an element of an artistic presentation by an expert artist or a sculptor. And we have land and water and air. And at every phase of the completion of those 3 habitats, we have the message conveyed: this is good. Land is good, water is good, air is good. And so when I look at these 3 habitats, and I use that term very specifically, I'm seeing a doorway into a mystical understanding that roots us in our physical reality. And we as people have the opportunity to dwell or inhabit or operate within those 3 habitats by sharing space with the other creatures who live in those habitats. And how will we interact with those creatures which inhabit those habitats? Will we just take them in any manner whatsoever, or will we choose to say, consumption of animals is a mixed bag? Are we willing to, in a whole-scale manner, take over everything and dominate those habitats? Or do we say we're going to voluntarily refrain from at least some exertion of full dominion? We're going to limit ourselves. And I call that spiritual self-control. So one of my understandings of keeping kosher is looking at how these habitats, which are a window into the entire universe, are for me contact with God by choosing to not eat from and not kill some of those participating dwellers within those habitats. For me, keeping kosher is a way of touching the reality of creation and saying, I can consume this, but I will not consume this. And just one side note, and then I'll conclude. There are a few other elements, but I want to leave that as the main conceptual element, the main conceptual schema, you might say. The conclusion is on page 641. It's verse number 39. And some Jewish people somewhat tend to forget this. You might call it a postscript, but I think it's a very important element, especially in the ancient days when people were usually poor. If you saw an animal, we'd say roadkill, an animal that died of natural causes, or an animal that had been a victim of predation, you might just take advantage of it and consume it because it's free, as opposed to removing a cherished animal from your flock or your herd, which cuts down on your income, you might say. Israelites, for thousands of years, have said, we're not going to consume an animal that died of natural causes or that was a function of predation. We're going to leave it alone. And I would reiterate that we're touching on an element of appreciation of life, the life force of an animal that needs to be accepted as where it is, as it, you might say, expires naturally. I suppose I'm trying to get to the point of how do I exhibit control over the world in which I live? Do I say I can access anything I want, or do I put forth my place in the world as a place of humility before the Creator of all things? And keeping kosher, for me, is a way of demonstrating humility by voluntarily self-restraining my desires, my appetites, and my power. In so doing, I interact with the world in a holistic manner, in a reverential manner, and I see creation before me anytime I pick up my fork. Thank you for welcoming me to your bima. Good Shabbos.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Steve. Sorry, I get. Okay, here we go. Turn this off. Okay. Thank you so much, Rabbi Steve. I can't tell you how appreciative I am that after 2 years of the pandemic, I actually was able to sit in my pews and listen to someone else do the Devar. You're welcome back anytime. I've just been invited down to Mobile. I cannot wait to do that. Okay. We are going to move to the conclusion of our service with Musaf. Ask everyone to please rise. Page 185. We will chant the first 3 brachot together, and then you may continue till page 192 and recite to yourselves the final 4 brachot. Anyway, we begin together, page 185. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor V'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Dovim V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot, Mevigo Elivnei V'neim, L'man Shemo B'Yahava, Melech Ozer Fokir Mashiach Magen, Baruch Ata Adonai, Magen Avraham, Mufaked Sarah, Ata Gibor Lilam Adonai, Mechayem Etimato Rav Lahoshia, Mashiva Ruach Umarid Hagashem, Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed, Mechayem Etim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Rofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayim emunato lishenei afar michamocham bal gevurot umido melach melech mimit umechayeh umatzmiach Yeshua v'ne'emanat alachayot metim baruch ato Adonai mechayeh hametim. Naritzacha v'nakadishcha kesod siach sarfei kodesh hamakdishim shimcha bakodesh kakahatu vayad neviacha v'kara ze el ze v'yamar kadosh 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 Adonai tzavot malach ha'aretz kevodo Kevodo Malei Olam Misharatav Shoalim Zelaze Aye Mekom Kevodo Leomatam Baruch Yomeru Baruch V'Adonai Mimkomo Mimkomo hu yifen berachamim v'achonam ham yachadim shemo erev v'avoker b'chol yom tamid pamayim bi'ava Shema Omrim, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Hu Eloheinu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu Moshienu, Ve'hu Yashmienu, Yashmienu Berachamav, Shenit, 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 Shenit li'enei kol chai, leod lachem le'elohim, ani Adonai Elohechem, uvdivrei k'tchecha katuv lemor, yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohai Zion, ledor vador, hallelujah. Ledor vador, ledor vador, Ledor vador nagid god lecha ulenetzach netzachim kedushak dana kadish ledor vador nagid god lecha ulenetzach netzachim kedushak naktish v'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush le'elam va'ed ki omelech gadol v'kadosh ata ledor vador nagid god lecha ulenetzach netzachim kedushakta naktish Baruch Atah Adonai, Ho'el HaKadosh. מודים אנחנו לך. We continue page 204. Ein Keloheinu, ein Kadonenu, ein Kemalkeinu, ein Kemoshienu, ein Keloheinu, ein Kadonenu, ein Kemalkeinu, ein Kemoshienu, mi Keloheinu, mi Kadonenu, mi Kemalkeinu, mi Kemoshienu, ein Keloheinu, ein Kadonenu, ein Kemalkeinu, ein Kemoshienu, no de leloheinu, no de ladonenu, no de lemalkeinu, no de lemoshienu, ein keloheinu, ein kadonenu, ein kemalkeinu, ein kemoshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Atahu Shektiru, Avotenu, Lefanecha Ketoret Hasamim, Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemoshienu. We rise, page 205, as the ark is open for Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol latet gdula liotzer bereshit shalo asan k'goye haratzot v'lo samanu kamishmachot hadama shalo sam chelkenu kahem v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל ושכינתו זו בגבי מרומים הוא אלוהינו אין עוד Emet Malkeinu Evazulato Kakatu Betorato Viadata Hayam Vashevota Elevavecha Ki Adonai Elohim Bashamayim Mimal Viala Aretz Mi tachat Einod al kenik velachadon Einu li me b'tivech l'juzecha gluli minach Etz Ahayem Gagadu b'doratecha Adonai imloch le'olam vo'ed v'nehemar ve'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom mahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. You may be seated. This week we will observe yahrzeits for Abraham Butler, Zeb Capuano, Gerard Karstens, Patricia Siegel Davis, Pinky Hassan, Reuben D. Lipman, Sylvia Rubin, Daniel Siegel, and David Siegel. Those observing yahrzeit and those who mourn, please rise, page 207, and join me for the Kaddish Tome, the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash merabah b'yomah divrah chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael b'agalav v'zman kariv v'maru amen Yehi shmei rabba mevarach le'olam ulmei al-maya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei d'kudsha barichu Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran b'yomah v'yimaru amen Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen Oseh shalom b'mirmav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen. You may be seated. Shabbat Shalom. So glad you all have joined us for this just remarkable, glorious Shabbat morning. I'm so appreciative of Rabbi Steve Silberman and Avas Chesed, the entire community, along with the communities of Dothan, Auburn, that bring you our weekly Alabama Community Virtual Havdalah, which, by the way, will be tonight at 7:30 p.m. Okay. Again, I say it's at 7:30. Those that think it's at 7 and come habitually late, you're right on time. If you come early, you're going to be a bit early. So it's at 7:30 tonight. If you did not get the link, please email me at ravmalki@gmail.com. That's ravmalki@gmail.com, and I will get you that link so that you can join us. Monday and Thursday this week, we will have our morning minyan at 7:15 a.m., and I am so happy to say with breakfast following. We have 2 weeks ago, David Herman and Gerald Leibovitz have started bringing us breakfast again. And it's a hot breakfast. We have scrambled eggs, bagels, cream cheese, lox, and you name it. Jerome will cook it up and give it to us. So please come Monday and Thursday for breakfast. Next Saturday, next weekend, we have an ufruf on Saturday morning for Richard Leibovitz, who is getting married soon after. So come and celebrate with the Leibovitz family. And we should have a nice crowd here next week. We'll have a full Torah service. In fact, we'll have another rabbi in the congregation because Richard's father-in-law is a rabbi. So that ought to keep him in line. And we're just so really, really proud of Richard and all that he's accomplished. He went and got a law degree and practices in in Chicago. So we're so happy for him and the entire Leibovitz family. That's about it for now. Okay. We will now conclude our service page. I'm sorry, we went a little bit long today. We had 2 rabbis on the bima. You're lucky we got out before noon. We're the only ones laughing. Page 211, we'll end our service with Adon Olam. Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Liet Nasa, V'chefso Kol, Azay Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, V'yachare Kichlot Tako, Livado Yimloch Nara Adon Olam, V'hu Aya, V'hu Ove, V'hu Yebetifara Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Liet Nasa, V'chefso Kol, Hazai Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, V'hu Echad V'yein Sheni, Lam Shelo L'Hachbira Adon Olam, Beli Reshi, Beli Tachlit, V'lo Ha'oz V'ha'misra Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Liet Nasa, V'chefso Kol, Azay Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, V'hu Eli, V'chai Goali, V'tzorchev li b'yetzara Adon Olam, V'hu Nisi, Umanosli, Minat Kosi B'yomekra Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Liet Nasa, V'chefso Kol, Azay Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam, Biyado Afkid Ruchi, B'yetishan V'yaira Adon Olam, V'maruchi Giviati, Adon Oli V'lo Ira Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Liet Nasa, V'chefso Kol, Azay Melech Shemo Nikra Adon Olam. Shabbat Shalom.